Good morning, gang. It is 10 o'clock on Monday. I feel like singing the remember in Groundhog's Day, what was that song? Oh yeah, Sonny and Cher. They like, babe, I got you, babe, every day. But I'm working hard to wear a different outfit every day so that it isn't like Groundhog's Day. At some point, my closet may run out. Oh, there we've got a couple of eyes who come on, say hello, say good morning, so I know people are here. Good. We're getting a few more. Nice to see you all. I trust everybody had a good weekend. I spent some time sewing masks with my mom. Hey Pam, how are you? Or Pam, as we like to say it. My friend Pam, she says Pam with three syllables because she's from Texas. Yeah, my mom and I did some masks this weekend. The first one took us like an hour to do. It was ridiculous. We are not going to be hired by the garment industry. But then we got a little faster at it. So we've done 10 so far. So mom's sitting there in the background. Um, I want to mention our digital resources today. I've got a couple of them. Number one, go over to my blog at mariebostwick.com and then you'll see the blog. I've got a really good chicken vegetable curry recipe that you all definitely need to try. It's really good and it'll help you kind of change things up a little in the kitchen if you're doing a lot of cooking at home. Another thing, we have really been enjoying streaming programs from PBS. So go to pbs.org. They have a lot of free programming that you can stream for nothing. But then if you, and I don't know, it's different in different places, but in Oregon, if you became a sustaining member, which means there's a monthly amount as little as $5 a month, you get something called the OPB, Oregon Public Broadcasting Passport, which gives us access to like 1,500 different programs that we can stream for free. So, for example, we started streaming Ken Burns' documentary about country music this weekend. So that's another great resource. All right, here we are. We are reading a single thread. Today we are reading, I believe, chapters 14 and 15. And if you've been keeping on, you know what's going on. Oh, I want to mention, hopefully this won't happen, but one time there was one occasion when the stream just stopped. If that were to happen, I would just start up again as quickly as I can. So you would just look for another window with me in this same outfit. If you're coming in for the first day, look in the feed or on my YouTube channel, and you'll be able to find other, the other sessions. Okay, so are we ready? Let's read. I'm ready. Chapter 14, Evelyn Dixon. When Abigail received her assignment that night, I had the impression she was less than thrilled at being suddenly drafted into Margot's army. Part of me wondered if I'd ever see her again. But she was good as her word, and her influence in the community of New Bern was unquestionable. When Abigail Burgess showed up at the public library seeking information on breast cancer the next day, the research librarians must have clicked their heels and saluted. By mid-afternoon, she returned to the shop with reams of information, all neatly cataloged with particularly important sections highlighted in yellow marker. I read it all. Nothing in what I read changed my situation. There was no magical cure in those pages, but just having that information made me feel a little less powerless. I used what I'd read to formulate a list of questions to ask when I interviewed the breast surgeons, who, again, thanks to Abigail's influence, all agreed to see me within 2 weeks' time. An impressive response, considering that the surgeon Dr. Thayer referred me to couldn't fit me in for at least 6 weeks. 10 days later, I was sitting in the waiting room of Dr. Deanna Finney, the third and last of the doctors on Abigail's list. Liza was keeping an eye on the shop, and Margot had come along to drive. I told Margot it wasn't necessary, but she insisted, claiming she wanted to visit an antique shop that was right around the corner from the doctor's office. Having interviewed 2 other surgeons, both highly recommended and obviously very skilled, I was now familiar with the drill. The nervous minutes pretending to read magazines until the receptionist showed you into a chrome and white and cold exam room. Silence and more nerves waiting for the harried and brilliant surgeon to appear. going through my list of questions and trying to make sense of the doctor's answers, and a quick handshake as the doctor moved on to the next patient. So I was surprised when the door of the waiting room opened and a petite woman with short, spiky brown hair and a warm smile strode across the room and said, "Evelyn, I'm Dr. Finney." She shook my hand and then Margot's when I introduced her. "It's nice to meet you both. Should we go into my office and talk? Would you like Margot to join us?" Sensing that I wanted to speak to the doctor privately, Margot said she was just going to run around the corner and visit the antique shop. "That's fine. Come back in about 45 minutes. I think we'll be done by then, though it could be a bit longer. No more than an hour. That's when my next patient arrives." Again, I was surprised. "You've put aside an hour just to talk to me?" The doctor smiled. "On a first visit, I like to give a patient plenty of time. I'm sure you have lots of questions." She showed me into a space that looked more like a cozy sitting room than an office. There was a desk shoved up against one of the walls, but that was the only businesslike piece of furniture in the room. Most of the room was taken up by 4 easy chairs upholstered in sage green chenille that circled an antique oak coffee table. There was an oak sideboard under the window holding a Christmas cactus just coming into bloom and a white ceramic tea service. After telling me to make myself at home, the doctor went to the sideboard and made tea. "All I have is chamomile. I hope that's all right. I'm trying to cut down on caffeine." "That's fine, thank you." I sat down in one of the chairs and noticed that 2 of the office windows were covered with black and white photographs of women, some smiling, some serious, all beautiful. "Who are these pictures of? Your patients?" "Yes," she said, and placed 2 cups of tea on the table. "Those are my patients. Not all of them, of course, just the ones who didn't mind having their picture taken." Without thinking, I blurted out, "Are they all still alive?" and then blushed at the frankness of my question. But the doctor didn't seem to be at all fazed. "Most of them, yes, and there's every reason to believe you will be too." She smiled, noticing my embarrassment. "It's all right, Evelyn. It's a perfectly fair question. When a woman finds out she has breast cancer, the first question that enters her mind, and the question she is most afraid to ask, is, am I going to die? When I learned about my own breast cancer, that's exactly what I was thinking." "You had breast cancer?" She took a sip of her tea and nodded. "I did. I had a mastectomy to move my right breast 6 years ago and reconstruction after. The plastic surgeon did a great job, don't you think?" I couldn't help but stare at Dr. Finney's chest. Her breasts were perfectly even. "I would never have guessed if you hadn't told me. Is that why you decided to become a breast surgeon?" "No, I was already in the field, but having cancer myself completely altered the way I run my practice. Up until then, I was confident in my skills. I had excellent training, and the survival rate of patients was extremely high. As far as I was concerned, that was all that mattered. But when it happened to me, I realized there is a lot more to this than removing diseased tissue and thereby saving someone's life. Now I treat people, not cancer." When faced with the prospect of losing my own breast, I was shocked at how devastated I felt. I'd never realized how deeply I associated the image of myself as a woman with my breasts. I understood exactly what she was saying. Sitting across from another woman, a woman who knew what I was going through, who had felt what I was feeling and talked about it while we sipped tea, it felt more like we were just 2 friends talking over a problem than a doctor telling a patient what she must do. Before she said another word, I knew that this was my doctor. Not everyone feels that way, of course. Everyone comes into this with different life experiences and needs. Some of my patients want the breast removed immediately. Some of them want reconstructive surgery after, and some don't. Some choose to wear prosthetics, and others don't. Every woman is different, and every choice is as valid as the others. I try my best to listen to my patients, present all the options, and then work with them to find a plan of treatment that they can be comfortable with. If a woman wants to conserve her breasts, I try my best to do so. It isn't always possible, of course. In the end, I had to lose my breasts to save my life, but I take comfort in the knowledge that I had explored all the avenues before deciding on a mastectomy. Do you think you can save my breast? I asked. The other surgeons I interviewed only talked about mastectomy. She tilted her head to one side and nodded. Many excellent surgeons believe in pursuing the most aggressive treatment possible. In many cases, that is the best course of action, and as I explained before, that's how many women wish to proceed. It's a perfectly reasonable response if that's what you would prefer. In your case, I think it may be possible to conserve the breast. She opened the file that contained my charts, medical history, x-rays, and spread them out on the coffee table where I could see everything easily. Let me show you what I mean, she began. As Dr. Finney explained, breast cancer comes in many different forms. Previous tests showed that I had DCIS, ductal carcinoma in situ, a non-invasive cancer, which meant that the cancer B cells had not yet broken through the duct walls, a good thing. In fact, the doctor explained, some people consider DCIS to be a precancerous condition, but I had high-grade DCIS with markedly abnormal cells that meant it was much closer to becoming an invasive cancer. However, as far as I can tell right now, the cancer appears to be contained, she said, holding up one of the mammography films and pointing out the suspicious area, which makes me think you'll be a good candidate for a lumpectomy. That's where we only move the cancerous breast tissue, leaving the rest of the breast intact. It can actually be done as a day surgery. Really? This was the first good news. I'm sorry, you can tell my little dog is sitting here next to me. There's nothing out there. Don't bark. Excuse us. Really? This was the first good news I'd had in a long time. You mean you'll just scoop out the cancer and that's it? She smiled. Well, it's not quite that easy. The surgery will be over with fairly quickly, but you'll need some time to recover. You own a quilt shop, that's right? She asked, glancing at the sheet of my personal information in my chart. Do you have capable assistants in place to help you run the business until you're fully healed? It's crucial that you have a good support system in place and people you can count on to help you through the rough spots. Do you? Dr. Finney looked up, waiting for an answer. I bit the inside of my lower lip, thinking. I really wasn't sure how to answer that. I don't have any family in the area, if that's what you mean. I only moved here a few months ago. And I don't really have any paid assistants in the shop. I can't afford assistants until I start to show a profit. So I've been doing everything myself. Really? The doctor said incredulously. You run your entire business yourself, no paid employees? I shrugged. Well, my original business plan called for me to hire some help within the first month, but things haven't gone quite as well as I'd hoped, at least not yet. 60 hours is a short week for me. There are a few women from my quilting classes who volunteered to help with a big event I had recently, but they all work during the week. There are some others, though. Margot, who you met in the waiting room, has said she'll help however she can, and there are two others, Liza and Abigail. I only met them recently. They sort of appeared out of nowhere, and they've already done so much for me. I don't know how I'll ever repay them. I just feel funny asking them for more. Don't, the doctor said emphatically. You simply can't work the kinds of hours you've been working while you're dealing with this. If you've got friends, old or new, who are willing to come alongside you, don't be shy about letting them. I know it can be hard, taking help from strangers, but believe me, there will be ways for you to pay back those kindnesses in the future. But you can't do that unless you get well. Right now, that is your first priority. I knew that what she was saying made sense. If I'd been in her shoes, I'd have said exactly the same thing, but still. Evelyn. She put down her teacup and took my hand. I hope this will be as easy as going into the breast, removing the cancerous cells, and helping you go on with your life, experiencing nothing more than some post-operative discomfort. But that may not be the case. The diagnostic equipment and tests we have today are excellent, but I won't really know the situation until I get in there. After the surgery, we'll do more tests to make sure we've gotten clean margins. That means there's an area of healthy cells surrounding the place where the cancerous cells were. That's what we're aiming for. But it doesn't always happen. Sometimes we have to do another lumpectomy or follow up with chemotherapy. Sometimes it becomes necessary to take the whole breast. Oh. Instinctively, my hand rose to cover my chest. I see. Dr. Finney reached for my hand and looked me in the eye. Her gaze was warm and understanding. Listen, Evelyn, you've just got to take this one day at a time. If I didn't think we could save your breast and get all the cancer, then I wouldn't bother with this lumpectomy. But it is important that you have all the facts and are ready for what could come. You'll need to plan for the long haul, Evelyn. The better prepared you are, the wider your support network, the easier this will be. If God has sent you 3 ministering angels to see you through this, don't question it. You need all the help you can get right now. Nothing about this is going to be easy. A month later, I was feeling more in control of my own destiny and actually impatient for the 2 weeks to pass before my surgery would take place, anxious to get it over with and get back to normal. In the weeks since I'd met Margot, Liza, and Abigail, fall colors had peaked and passed. The stream of newborn tourists became a trickle, and then slowed to a wholly unpredictable drip as the weather grew colder. I ate, slept, ran errands, cleaned house, paid bills, went to work, and taught classes, just like before. Cancer or no, life marches on. There were a few times, for minutes and even an hour altogether, when I forgot to remember that I had cancer. But then someone would say something, or not say something, or there would be a momentary calm in the busyness of the day, and I would remember that my own body had betrayed me. Somewhere within my breasts, the breasts whose appearance I had anxiously awaited and proudly welcomed as a girl, that had drawn my husband's eyes and known his caresses as a woman, that had suckled and nourished my son as a mother, there was a terrible and slowly growing secret that, left unchecked, would end my life. Sometimes the truth was almost more than I could bear. If it had not been for Margot, Liza, and Abigail, it would have been. Where did they come from? Why did they appear when they did? Maybe it was like Dr. Finney had said, that God had sent me 3 angels. I don't know for sure, but it seemed possible. What would I have done without those 3? I don't want to imagine it. Which is not to say that everything was hunky-dory since those 3 angels entered my life. Far from it. But without them, I would certainly have lost my business and possibly my sanity. In Margot's case, the title angel seemed perfectly apt. She was darling, endlessly optimistic and giving. On top of that, she was a marketing genius. Not only had she streamlined my accounting and inventory process, her plan to get more papers to run the article and set up a website had indeed brought in new business. And while she didn't wear her religion on her sleeve, I knew her faith was an integral part of her being, and that she prayed for me, which I found comforting. Yes, the words angelic and Margot just seemed to go together. But oh, how Abigail would have balked at hearing herself described as an angel. There was nothing of harps and gossamer wings about Abigail. Still, I considered her one, and for that matter, Liza too. They might have been angels in very unlikely disguises, but the effect was the same. They appeared when I was sorely in need of a message of hope. They had abilities that I lacked, and used them to help me. Liza was quiet and hardly spoke to me at first. I was surprised to realize that, in spite of her tough girl Gothic fashions, she was really very shy and lacked confidence. But my other instincts about her had been correct. She had a deep appreciation for the power of color and an innate artistic sensibility. She knew exactly how to arrange colors and textures for maximum effect. On that first Monday, when she came in to help with the inventory, she timidly asked my permission to rearrange some of the displays. Her initial efforts, moving my collection of batiks toward the front of the store and displaying them against a collection of seagrass matting and big plastic glasses filled with rolls of brightly colored batik fabrics, electric blue straws, and paper umbrellas, reminded me of a picnic on a tropical isle. It was darling. Not only that, the new point-of-sale inventory system that Margot installed told me that sales of batiks, which were some of the most expensive fabrics in the shop, were up by 46%. When I asked Liza if she had any ideas for other displays, her face lit up. Really? You like what I did? Are you kidding? I love it. And so do the customers. You've got a real eye, Liza. You're an artist. She laughed derisively. Funny, that's not what the teachers at art school thought. I did pretty well in my sculpture classes. Guess I like working with things that have textures. I tried adding different found objects to some of my paint canvases, but my teachers didn't like it. Said I hadn't followed the project guidelines. I failed oil painting, got a D in watercolor. Abigail thinks I flunked out, but that's not quite true. I would have before long, so I figured, why stick around and wait for them to throw me out? At least this way I got to leave while it was still my own idea, you know? I didn't know, but this was the longest conversation I'd had with her and the first time she'd ever confided in me. I didn't want to interrupt. She needed to be heard. I'd already come to realize that communication between Liza and her aunt was more than a little strained. Liza bit her lower lip and then shrugged. I don't know who I was kidding anyway, thinking I could be an artist. It was just a silly dream. Hearing that, I couldn't keep silent any longer. It's not silly. Dreams may be the only thing on earth that aren't. I don't care what your teacher said, Liza. You are an artist. Maybe you're not a conventional sort of artist, but who cares? You're in very good company. Throughout history, the real artists, the innovators, were never appreciated initially. Did you know that Vincent van Gogh only sold one painting in his lifetime? Liza laughed, and this time she meant it. Yeah, and he died insane, lovesick, and minus an ear. Is that supposed to make me feel better? Seriously, Evelyn, you're not actually trying to compare me to Van Gogh, are you? Well, I don't know. I haven't seen any of your paintings yet, but you certainly have a unique eye for color, and you're very creative. What you did with the batik display was so inventive. If you have any other ideas for displays, just say the word. You have my permission to display the stock any way you see fit. You really mean it, don't you? I nodded and she beamed. Well, I was thinking about arranging the whole shop into seasons, fall, winter, spring, and summer groupings. I think it would be a lot more interesting than the standard color wheel system. Have at it, I said. Do what you want. Also, I've got some quilting books I'd like to show you. This idea you had of trying to add objects within a piece to create texture and interest, quilters have been doing that for years. It's called embellishing. I pulled a couple of the more innovative art quilt books off a nearby shelf. Take a look at this and see what you think. It might give you a few ideas. And feel free to take anything you need in the way of fabric or notions if you want to give it a try. Really? She looked around the shop eagerly, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her mind. Her eyes were full of ideas. Anything? Absolutely, I assured her. I'd love to see what you come up with. Well, she continued shyly, to tell you the truth, I was wanting to start working on a quilt, but I'm not sure how to get started. I made a sketch, and I was hoping I could show it to you at the end of our regular Friday night business meeting. That is, if you don't mind. Mind? Of course not. In fact, I was thrilled. Liza, that's a great idea. I should have thought of that myself, but I've been so wrapped up in myself that but I should have. Oh well, no time like the present. Starting this week, Friday night business meetings are a thing of the past. Liza looked a little confused, not realizing that she had inadvertently hit upon the thing I'd most desired, a way for me to give something back to my three angels. What are you talking about? We're going to start a quilting circle. That's what I'm talking about. Just you, me, Margot, and Abigail. Come Friday night, instead of all of you helping me, I'm going to do something for you. Help each of you start making a quilt that's all your own. But don't say anything to the others. I want it to be a surprise. That's chapter 14. I'm glad Evelyn's feeling a little better, aren't you? I forgot my tea, so, well, I'll just soldier on. Chapter 15. Abigail Burgess win. Aren't you ready yet? Liza's frowning visage unexpectedly appeared in my dressing room mirror, giving me a start. Obviously not. I pulled the edges of my silk blouse together to cover myself. There were 3 shirts lying on top of the dresser. I was having trouble deciding between them. Didn't anybody ever teach you to knock? She ignored the question. Evelyn said to be on time. We've got a lot to do tonight. Oh, she did she? I groused. You see, that's what you get for going out of your way to help strangers. You do 1 or 2 things for them and suddenly they think they're entitled. No one ever asked if I wanted to spend every Friday night of my life sitting around Evelyn Dixon's apartment discussing how much she should charge for thread. I've got better things to do with my time. Like what? Liza glared at my reflection, waiting for a response to her question, which I refused to dignify with an answer. Finally, she sighed and said, Hurry up, would you? It's too cold for a blouse anyway. Why don't you wear that turquoise sweater you had on last week? You look really good in it. Was that a compliment? From Liza? I was surprised, and judging by the look on her face, she was too. Just hurry, she said, resuming her usual impatient tone. I'll see you over there. She left, and I returned to the problem of getting dressed, finally deciding to take Liza's advice. The sweater did look good, and it was comfortable. After spending the whole day in a suit and heels at the Women's Shelter Board meeting, listening to Ted Carney drone on endlessly about the need for more stringent intake guidelines, a cozy sweater was a welcome change. Liza was so judgmental, I thought, as I stepped out of my heels and slipped into a pair of soft leather driving moccasins. Like what, she'd said, mocking how I spend my time. What did she know about it anyway? The shelter was an important resource for all sorts of families in crisis. Someone had to provide the funds to keep it running. Someone had to sit through all the silly board meetings. Of course, I sometimes wondered if the board didn't overcomplicate the mission. No, that wasn't quite true. I didn't wonder. I knew. Today was a perfect example. Ted Carney was such a pompous blowhard. All during the meeting, I'd sat drumming my pen on the conference table and wishing someone would pipe up and tell Ted he was being ridiculous. We didn't need more stringent intake guidelines. If anything, we needed to make the intake process easier. Then we needed to raise more money so we could help more people. Just the week before, I'd taken a tour of the shelter. Until then, I'd only seen the facility during the construction phase, before there were any people actually living there. Now that building was finished and every inch of space was filled. The director told me that the waiting list for new applications was months long, and there were so many children. Of course, I'd seen the facts and figures regarding the demographics of the people served by the shelter. However, it's one thing to read a report and note that X percentage of our residents were under 18, and quite another to meet a 6-year-old girl named Bethany with mismatched bows in her pigtails, one blue and one green, who, until she'd moved into the shelter, had been living in a car. I'd had no idea. The shelter apartment she shared with her mother and baby brother was tiny, just one room with a kitchenette and a bath. There were no curtains on the window, just white blinds. No pictures on the walls except a crayon drawing that the little girl had made at school and proudly hung on the refrigerator. Even so, she was eager to show me her new home. It was, to say the least, a disturbing visit. I didn't sleep well afterwards. What did Ted Carney think? That families were lining up to live in a shelter because it was such an appealing prospect? That they crowded into a tiny studio apartments we could provide because they were trying to save money on rent? People came to us because they were desperate. What the board should do with its time was figure out how to raise more money and build more apartments to help more people in need, not create more red tape to keep them from getting that help. Why hadn't someone told him that? It had been a long day. I reached up and massaged the sore muscles in my neck. The last thing I wanted to do right now was go to yet another meeting, but I was resigned to my fate. If I didn't show up, Liza would glare daggers at me for at least a week. Wearily, I pulled myself to my feet. At least with Margot running the agenda, there would be no time wasted on long speeches and speculation. Margot was all about action items and assigned responsibilities, far too many of them directed at me. Once again, I wondered how I had gotten roped into all this. A year before, my life was fine. My dance card was full of tennis, luncheon dates, cocktail parties, a few board meetings, and charity galas. I was happy. Now I was too busy for tennis and lunch, questioning the value of my various community commitments, and unable to sleep at night. I was tired and troubled. On top of that, I was living with a teenager whose very presence in my home was an ongoing accusation, who displayed her despise for me with every glance, and I was on the verge of offending some of the most influential people in New Bern by standing up in public and announcing that they were full of hot air. What in the world was going on? When was I going to get my old life back? When would I just be able to relax and enjoy myself again? I arrived at the shop at 5:15. The closed sign was out, but I went inside knowing that Evelyn would have left the door unlocked for me. As I climbed up the back stairs to Evelyn's apartment, I was surprised to meet Charlie Donnelly coming down. I was even more surprised to see him grinning broadly and whistling a tune. I'd known Charlie for years, and never once had I known him to whistle or seen him with so much as a light-hearted expression on his face. It made me wonder if there was more to Evelyn's friendship with Charlie than she was letting on. But of course, Evelyn's private business was certainly no concern of mine. That's one of the problems with letting yourself get too close to other women. They are always butting their noses into each other's private affairs and reporting their findings or speculations to anyone within earshot. There's nothing worse than a gossip. That's why I keep my own confidences. Hello, Abigail. Oh, I haven't done Irish for a few days. Let me see if I can figure this out. Hello, Abigail. You're late. No, I'm doing British. I don't know. We're just going to get through it. It'll come back. Hello, Abigail. You're late, Charlie announced with his customary tact. I gave him a look. Hello, Charlie, I said, stopping in the stairwell and leaning forward to accept a peck on my right cheek. Shouldn't you be at work? That's where I'm headed right now. I had a bit of a catering job to see. There it is. Now it's back. Had a bit of a catering job to see to first, he said, tipping his head toward the door of Evelyn's apartment. A catering job here? You best get up there. The food is getting cold. He pushed past me without answering my question and continued down the stairs, whistling all the way. Being brushed aside like that was irritating, but something did smell wonderful. I suddenly remembered that I hadn't eaten since breakfast. Evelyn answered the door, looking cheerful and well put together in a flattering black knit dress worn over black leather boots with an exotic hemp belt with silver accents encircling her waist. Stylish. Perhaps I should have worn the silk blouse after all. You're here, she exclaimed, as if genuinely pleased to see me. Come in. The dining table was set with a white cloth and a bright bouquet of gerbera daisies. Candles gave off a warm yellow glow and a faint scent of vanilla that wasn't quite overcome by the enticing smell of roast fowl. Evelyn's apartment, which I'd always felt she decorated in simple good taste, letting her many beautiful quilted wall hangings take center stage on the exposed brick walls, looked quite elegant in the candle glow. Margot walked over and handed me a glass of Cabernet. Here you go. Charlie said you only drink red. Charlie is right, I said, taking a moment to appreciate the scent of oak and newly turned earth that emanated from the glass before taking a sip. Very nice. What's going on? I thought we were having a meeting. Margot shrugged. Obviously, she was no better informed than I. We are, Evelyn confirmed. It's just a different sort of meeting. But first, we're going to have a lovely dinner. After everything you three have done for me, I wanted to do a little something for you. She took a sip from her own wine glass. And I wanted to give us a chance to talk about something besides my cancer or the shop. So we could just get to know each other a little bit. We've spent every Friday night of the fall together, but I really don't know any of you. It was everything I could do to keep from rolling my eyes. The idea of a dinner was nice, a lovely gesture, but the last thing I wanted was to get involved with some touchy-feely female tell-all session. I'd already been dragooned into helping Evelyn through her illness. Wasn't that enough? Did she have to become my new best friend? Evelyn was right. She didn't know me. If she had, she'd have realized that I didn't have a best friend, nor was I looking for one. Evelyn picked up a pair of hot pads and began pulling platters of food out of the oven. Margot, would you mind getting the salad out of the refrigerator? Liza emerged from the bathroom. She looked at me. Oh, good, you're here. The word finally hung in the air unspoken, but I paid no attention. She turned to Evelyn. Did you tell them yet? Tell us what? What's the big secret? Margot asked. Later, Evelyn insisted, after dinner. It was a delicious meal. After the salad, Evelyn served the grill's signature roast chicken with clear pan juice gravy, garlic mashed potatoes, and sautéed greens. It was heavier than my usual evening fare, but the perfect menu for a chilly winter night. My resistance broken down by the pressures of the day and 2 glasses of good wine, I decided to forget about my diet, at least for one night. But good food and pleasant surroundings aside, I still didn't like the idea of forced camaraderie. The others could bare their souls all they liked. All I was going to do was listen. It was interesting, however, to learn a little more about the others. Evelyn told an amusing story about her hiding in the towel department of a J.C. Penney when she was a little girl because she was so entranced by the rainbow of colors on the wall. I learned that Margot had graduated from Hamilton College, my late husband Wooley's alma mater, but I didn't bother to ask if they knew any of the same people. She had been there decades after Wooley graduated. Margot asked me a few questions about Wooley, how we'd met and fallen in love and all that, but I kept my answers appropriately brief, revealing little beyond saying I'd first met him at the museum. So odd, this modern bent for asking personal questions. It wasn't that way when I was growing up. It's all this television psychology that's done it. When people go on national television to tell the world every sordid detail of their pasts, I suppose asking personal questions at a dinner seems perfectly normal. But as far as I'm concerned, it's perfectly rude. And I haven't noticed this trend in communal honesty improving the world. Quite the opposite. Seems like the entire world is enrolled in a collective 12-step program, admitting you have a problem and taking the first step. Not in my book. As far as I am concerned, the first step is deciding that life is hard and getting on with it. Like Daddy said, never complain and never explain. Not a popular piece of philosophy, but it has served me well, and I have no intention of abandoning it now. Besides, I've discovered that you don't need to ask many questions to get people to reveal everything you'd want to know about themselves and more. Generally, one, delivered with a penetrating, deeply interested gaze is sufficient. Then all you have to do is sit back and listen. Try it sometime. You'll be shocked at what you hear. It works almost every time, but not on me. As I said, I prefer to keep my own confidences. Margot and I cleared the table and rinsed the dishes while Liza made a pot of decaffeinated coffee and Evelyn served dessert, a tall chocolate cake with crushed peppermint candies sandwiched between the layers and decorating the top. She'd made it herself. It looked tempting, but I simply could not eat another mouthful. The waistband of my slacks was already too tight. I sipped a cup of coffee while the others dug into the cake, and the conversation continued. At Evelyn's urging, Liza revealed a bit more about her interest in art and how, when she was 9 years old, she'd helped her mother paint a carnival mural on her bedroom wall. She said she'd decided to be an artist then and there, that she wanted to be an artist when she grew she said that she decided then and there that she wanted to be an artist when she grew up. Her artistic bent wasn't surprising, given her parentage, and of course, Susan had shown an early talent for painting herself. As I recalled, some of her landscapes had been quite good. There was a lull in the conversation. Margot broke it, saying, Liza, I hope you don't mind me asking, but what happened to your mother? I know she passed last year, but... Liza did mind her asking, I knew. When all this business started up with Evelyn, she told me in no uncertain terms that I was not to mention Susan's breast cancer to Margot or Evelyn. Once news of Susan's illness had become public, all kinds of people had started sharing their cancer stories with her. Usually the stories had been encouraging, but sometimes they'd been sad, even frightening. Really, why don't people think before they speak? So don't you dare go telling anyone about Mother, Liza had ordered, as though I'd ever dream of doing something like that. Yet again, I was irritated by Liza's low opinion of me. Margot's question hung in the air. Liza took a long, slow drink of her coffee, buying time, I thought, trying to figure out a way to answer without answering. I tried a diversionary tactic. Evelyn, you said you have a son. Where does he live? I smiled, looking directly at our hostess, but out of the corner of my eye I could spy a look of relief on my niece's face. Garrett lives in Seattle. He went to Harvey Mudd College and graduated with a degree in computer science. Now he's a programmer for a big company. It's a good job, or at least the pay is good, but it seems like he's always working. I've given up trying to call him at home. He's always at the office, dealing with some emergency or other. I spoke with him last weekend, and he joked that he was considering giving up his apartment in favor of a cot in the employee break room in a storage unit. At least I think he was joking. She smiled. Well, it's good that you raised such a hard worker. Will he be coming for a visit any time soon? Evelyn shook her head. No, he's so busy with work, and it's only his first year on the job. He doesn't have much in the way of vacation. And, well, to tell you the truth, she admitted sheepishly, I haven't told him about the cancer. Evelyn, Margot exclaimed, you haven't told him? How can you keep something like that from your own son? Liza added, using the disapproving tone I thought she reserved exclusively for me. He has a right to know. If he did, I'm sure he'd want to help you. Evelyn reached up and rubbed the side of her neck with her hand, a gesture I'd noticed she'd employed when under stress. I know. I will tell him, but in a few weeks, after all this is over. Liza glowered at her. Evelyn sighed. Oh, Liza, you're right. Garrett is a wonderful son. If he knew about this, he'd insist on coming out to help, and he just can't afford to do that right now. Not when he's just starting out in a new job. Claremont Solutions is one of the most important firms in the industry. This is a great opportunity for him. Garrett was up against 50 well-qualified applicants for this position. If he took time off to come help me now, the people at Claremont would only have to whistle to find somebody to take his place. I won't have him jeopardizing his future just because I cut some silly little lump that's going to be removed and forgotten in just a couple of weeks, she said with finality. Margot was about to say something, but I beat her to the punch. Very sensible, Evelyn. You're quite right. In another couple of weeks, you'll be through the worst of this. There's no point in endangering your son's career over a little surgery, is there? I looked pointedly at Margot. Well, she said slowly, and I could see she was wrestling with a response. I'm not sure it's fair keeping this from him, but you know your son, Evelyn. Maybe it isn't a good idea to tell him until after the operation. He shouldn't jeopardize a good job. They can be hard to find these days. I know from experience. Besides, we're here to give you all the help you need until you're well. In the candlelight, I could see the sheen in Evelyn's eyes. You've all been so wonderful to me, truly. If I'd been born with 3 sisters instead of as an only child, I couldn't have asked for 3 sweeter, more giving women to help me through this. There just aren't words to thank you. Oh, dear. Defying my explanations, this had been a pleasant evening, at least so far. The last thing we needed to do was spoil it with some emotional scene. I jumped in. Well, you've certainly done a lovely job thanking us tonight, I said expansively. It was just delightful. Such a treat at the end of a long, tiring week. Evelyn smiled, and I was relieved to notice that she swallowed back her tears. It really was my pleasure. I've been racking my brain thinking of what I could do for the 3 of you, and then I figured it out. You didn't have to do anything for us, Margot said. It's been no hardship helping you. Actually, I've enjoyed it. It's certainly more fun working at Cobbled Court than sending out endless resumes and cover letters for jobs I don't get. Margot's usually smiling face grew serious. It was the first time I'd seen a cloud on her normally sunny disposition. Clearly, the months of unemployment had been harder on her than she'd let on. I know the economy is in a slump, but I never imagined that I'd be having such a hard time finding a new job. I was really beginning to doubt myself and my skills, but Evelyn, working with you has reminded me that I actually am good at what I do, even if corporate America doesn't seem to need my services. I can't speak for the others, but I suspect that even though you think we're helping you, you're helping each of us just as much. I know everyone might not feel the same way, Margot said, looking at me as if anticipating my discomfort with her assertion. But I think God has brought us together for a reason. In some way or another, we need each other. So, really, you don't have to thank us. Maybe not, but I do. And this, Evelyn said, sweeping her hand across the table, was just the appetizer. The best part is yet to come. Pushing back her chair, she got to her feet. Ladies, grab your coffee cups and follow me downstairs. There's something I want to show you. That is the end of chapter 15, my friends. We'll have to find out tomorrow what Evelyn was going to show us. I hope that your week gets off to a really good start. Oh, goodness, somebody's gotten me an angry face. I don't know why. Jake, maybe it's just a mistake. I hope so. I don't think I've done anything that's particularly angry. Or maybe you're angry at Abigail. Who knows? So I like to end with a Bible verse, and this is one that got my attention today from my reading. Evening and morning and at noon I will pray and cry aloud, and he shall hear my voice. He has redeemed my soul in peace from the battle that was against me. That is Psalm 55, verses 17 through part of 18. And I was thinking about that a lot this morning because right now I think the battle is in ourselves, trying to stay positive and stay cheerful. And the way I kind of often help to win that battle is to turn to prayer. And I know some of you feel the same way. So, all right, my darlings, I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we'll go on with our reading. Hope you have a great day.